My name is Erika James, Dean of the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for joining us at our inaugural Beyond Business series. Beyond Business is an ongoing conversation that will explore the most complex and challenging problems facing individuals and organizations today. It's a three-part series shining a light on how systemic racism impacts business and society as a whole and ways it can be confronted. Our lecture series this year is devoted to the topic of race. There are 3 different lectures, and today I'm excited to be joined by friends and colleagues to talk about race and the entrepreneur. Today's conversation will explore the challenges that Black entrepreneurs face due to important practices, or unjust practices rather, that limit their ability to shine in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. At this point, it is my great pleasure to introduce our speakers for the Race and Entrepreneurship discussion today. Josh Koppelman, Wharton grad from 1993 and managing partner of First Round, is joining us, as is Chris Bennett, 2007 Wharton graduate and co-founder and CEO of Wharton School. You should know that Chris is joining us from Honduras today, and 30 minutes before this session started, the power went out, and so he is joining us by his phone, but we are very confident that the team at Wharton will ensure that there are a number of redundancies to keep him visible and all of us able to hear Chris while he's speaking. And then my colleague, Professor Carl Ulrich, who's joining us. Carl is the Vice Dean of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Wharton School, and he will serve as our moderator of Q&A during our session today. So just as an introduction to how things will unfold, I will start our conversation with Josh and Chris, have a handful of questions, and then Carl will come on to moderate a conversation with the audience. So as you hear things that spark your interest or raise a question for you, please use the chat feature, and we will be sure to engage you in conversation towards the latter half of this session. So, welcome, Carl and Chris. Thank you so much for being here. My first question, actually, Chris, is to you. Let's begin with your journey. Tell us a little bit about your own entrepreneurial pathway, how you got to where you are, and what you would like us to know about Wharton School.
Thank you for having me here, and I'm really excited to speak with everyone. So my name is Chris Bennett. I'm the CEO of Wharton School. My parents are from Honduras. My parents are immigrants to the U.S. I grew up in Miami, Florida, and I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my uncle runs a hospital here in Honduras. My parents all started small businesses in Miami, and I got access to entrepreneurship at a really young age. I was the first in my family to go to college, and I applied to Wharton because a Penn alum in Miami, who was a good friend of mine's mom, recommended I consider Wharton because I'm interested in business. And so I went to Wharton, graduated in 2007, and after graduating, I worked in private equity at a firm called Heitman in Chicago for 2 years. And then after that, I moved to the Bay Area, and I've been in the Bay Area for about 10 years. And I started Wharton School primarily because I kept hearing from my friends that they were having a hard time finding childcare. And I personally experienced the benefits of high quality childcare as a kid, and started the company. I've been running it for the past 4 years. We've raised over $20 million. Josh Koppelman is one of our investors and sits on the board. And I'm really excited to be here. The only other thing I'll add is Wharton School is a network of high-quality early child care programs based out of people's homes. And we work with folks who are running programs that are in parks now, and we're all over the United States. Thank you.
Well, congratulations on your success. I'm wondering if you've seen an uptick in light of COVID with the demand for Wharton School.
Yeah, it's a great question. So in March, we actually saw a big decrease in interest in Wharton School programs. So parents all over the country were pulling their children out of childcare programs and bringing their children in home to their homes because of fear of getting exposure to COVID. And then probably for about 3 months, we've really been rethinking our model and thinking about how we're going to respond to these times. And I would say over the past 2 to 3 months, we've seen a pretty massive uptick in interest. And we launched a micro school solution about 2 months ago to support folks who are starting pods and folks who are starting childcare programs for childcare for children over the age of 5. We're seeing a lot of interest there. And then we're also getting a lot of interest from governments and from employers who are looking for support with childcare these days. So that's something we're focused on as well.
So Josh, I want to bring you in just a moment, but one more follow-up question for you, Chris. It sounds as if once you're established as a pretty solidly running company, things continue to grow and there's some momentum behind you. But tell me about those first few months or years as you were developing the concept for Wonder School, and how did you get it to this point, and what are some of the advantages or challenges that you confronted?
So what's interesting about Wonder School is essentially the second concept that I brought to market as a CEO. The first concept was a company called Solzy. And I started Solzy in 2011 with my co-founder. And starting that was really challenging. It was really hard. I didn't have much of a network in the technology world. So there were a lot of things that I didn't know about building a company, about fundraising, about recruiting, about building a product that I frankly learned just figuring it out through trial and error. And eventually was able to raise, our first round and then our Series A and start to grow the company. When it came to starting Wonder School, I had the benefit of starting Solzy and going through a lot of those learnings, and also had the benefit of already having investors because we pivoted Solzy into Wonder School. So Josh is on the board, was on the board of Solzy, on the board of Wonder School, and we were fortunate to be able to work with Josh and to learn from him, but also to have investors who are interested in funding the concept, primarily because, it's a strong idea, but secondly, because of the experience I was able to garner starting Solzy and the confidence investors had in me being able to fundraise in the future, recruit employees, and bring the concept to market.
Thanks, Erika. This has been a terrific discussion, and thanks, Chris and Josh, for sharing your thoughts. Chris, I got a huge number of questions here from the audience, but I want to start with a question that we can't let pass, which is you have your feet in two worlds, well, in many worlds, but one is in Honduras, where you're sitting right now. And you said you came from a family of entrepreneurs and cited all these people in Honduras. Blacks are even less represented in Honduras than in the United States, at least as I understand the ethnic makeup of Honduras. Contrast a little bit the Honduran experience and the American experience, and also that of the Black immigrant, the more recent immigrant to the United States.
So I think the numbers, I think the Black community in Honduras is under 5%, and it's very, very marginalized. My parents came to the U.S. because they knew that they weren't going to be able to have the success. They had a higher chance of success for themselves and for their children in the U.S. And you see even less sort of Black success here in Honduras. There's, it's really sad. And my uncle, who's a Black man, is a pretty incredible success story. To grow up in the same situation my parents grew up in. My dad, for example, he didn't even graduate. He didn't even go to high school. And my uncle, was able to his mom was a teacher. His able to he played soccer for the professional team here, and then use that money to fund his medical education. Realized he wasn't going to be able to realize his full potential if he just stayed kept working as a doctor within the system, primarily due to racism, and decided to start his own hospital. And now he runs 2 hospitals, employs 350 people. His daughter is a doctor. His son is a lawyer and works at the hospital. His other daughter is a doctor and works at the hospital. And seeing him, achieve that level of success through really hard work and perseverance, despite all of the, racism he experienced, is probably one of my biggest motivations when I'm going about my work on a daily basis in San Francisco. So, being a Black man in San Francisco or in the United States, personally, I believe you have access to a lot more opportunity, even with all of the challenges that we have in the United States relative to a country like Honduras. Does that answer your question, Carl? Is there anything else I missed?
And then just a quick follow on. I'm super curious about what it was like to grow up in Miami as a Black man, as a Black young man, and how you were perceived as an immigrant, and whether that or as a child of immigrants, and whether that was a very different experience as relative to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so what's interesting about Miami is incredibly diverse. So I actually grew up in the 50th most diverse zip code in America. So in my neighborhood, there was a mixture of everyone, and I got exposed to a ton of different cultures as a kid. And then I also went to a high school that was made to desegregate the area. So I grew up in a very diverse neighborhood, but there was a white neighborhood, a Black neighborhood, and a Latin neighborhood. And our school was roughly split right in the middle, 33% of each. And as a kid, you don't realize, at least I didn't realize, the intention of the school district and creating the system that I was a part of. So I just thought that's what America looked like. I thought that's what America was. I always just thought that America was diverse and, frankly, integrated. And when you go to Penn, it's very similar. It's a very integrated, very diverse school. And it wasn't until I moved to Chicago that I realized the deep segregation that exists within American society, and how the color of your skin plays a big role in the types of experiences you have from an economic standpoint and from a social mobility standpoint. And then I actually had to go back and do a ton of research and learning to really understand the forces at play. So growing up in Miami, it was it was very challenging still, because there's within Miami, the Black community is very marginalized still, and they're still really difficult to achieve the outcomes that are desired. But it was a really unique experience.